What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lassercast, where we review horror movies and streaming shows. And I'm with my good friend right over there, Dr. Zayas God. We're wearing the same clothes from our last recording because we just recorded. Danny, don't you think it's kind of funny? Last episode, when we reviewed True Detective Night Country, you kind of had this part where you talked about those types of guys that were against True Detective Night Country. And you were like, oh, they live in the basement. They're on their computers. And then like 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh, my mom's here. I can't spoil the show, right? And I'm like,
I mean, you also have a wife and children, though.
yes. I think I should explain to our viewers that maybe watch that and watch this. That like I have a night off per week where I like go to my mom's apartment. So I'm away from my family to get a little break and take care of stuff. And that's where I record with my friend over here. So now that I'm in my mom's apartment, let's talk about some savage murders that took place in Italy in 1975.
Yes.
So,
Profondo Rosso.
Danny, this one, right? Deep Red. Would you like Tenebrae better, right? Like Tenebrae is your favorite?
It's really funny. I don't know. I Argento is a filmmaker that his decade plus, his like, and I always make the comparison to Carpenter because their primes are almost the same. Like 75, maybe even a little before 75, because um, uh, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage is really good. That's his first movie, and he has a couple other giallo that came out in the early 70s. But really, like the films that Argento is mainly known for are 75 to like 88, from Deep Red to Opera. And Carpenter, of course, it's really like Assault on Precinct 13 in 76 up through In the Mouth of Madness in 94. And then that's really it. But that stretch of films for Argento, from Deep Red, Suspiria, Inferno, Tenebrae, Phenomena, it's like every time I watch them, they become my favorite Argento movie until I see another Argento movie. So like I showed Charlotte Suspiria and I was just like, God, I fucking love Suspiria. Yeah. Then we watched Phenomena together and I was like, oh my God, Phenomena is so freaking crazy. I love Phenomena. Then I went to IFC when they were doing their Argento retrospective and I saw Inferno and Tenebrae back to back. And then I rewatched Tenebrae again because we were covering it.
Right.
Tenebrae, I think, is special because of the music, because of some of those scenes. I've really gained an appreciation for Tenebrae, but I love parts of Inferno. I love parts of Phenomena like the most. I can't really say. I think I would put Tenebrae ever so slightly above Deep Red, but Deep Red has so many great fucking moments in it.
Yeah.
I will say that Deep Red is also a little weird because how did you watch it? Where did you watch Deep Red?
On Shudder.
Okay, so on Shudder, it was like what, an hour and 46 minutes?
That sounds right, yeah.
So I rewatched it on Screambox.
Okay.
And on Screambox, they have a 2 hour and 7 minute cut, which is really hard to watch because most of the movie is in English, as I'm sure it was on Shudder.
It was, yeah.
But then part of the movie is Italian, including the non-Italian members of the cast. So it's backwards dubbed into Italian, and the what do you call them? The closed captions don't match up to what's on screen.
Oh, wow.
And I think what I was reading on IMDb is that like they like reproduced this like mashed cut of stuff that had been edited out from the movie, and they edited that back in, and it kind of feels a little bit overlong and a little bit weird because there's a bunch of random yelling and Italian, and there's like one moment where dogs are biting each other, and you're like, huh?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't remember this. And I'm like, I must have only ever seen the hour and 46-minute original cut. And that's probably the better movie. So you probably just had the better viewing experience of Deep Red than I did.
Yes.
And I was like rewatching it going, I don't remember this being over 2 hours. And
Yeah.
probably with good reason. But when those moments come, they're fucking great.
Yes, yes. Now, I know that it was on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, maybe like a year or two ago at this point. I watched a little bit of it on there. Whenever I watch The Last Drive-In, I watch it live, and I often have to do stuff with my kids. I have to like put my kids to bed, like right around that time that it comes on. So I'll see like little bits of things, and then I'll get sidetracked. I was intrigued by this movie when I was watching on The Last Drive-In, and I'm sure Joe Bob gave a whole bunch of really interesting trivia. I learned a lot of things just like doing some research on this movie. One of the first things is what I have scrolling on the bottom here, the saber-toothed tiger. That was going to be the title for this movie. Yes. And I think it was because Argento had like a lot of like animal named movies, right?
Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Four Flies on Gray Velvet. And there's another one that The Cat of Nine Tails. Those are his like 3 first films. They're like his first 3 Giallo films. And what you start to notice if you get into Giallo filmmaking and Italian cinema of like the 60s and 70s is that a lot of the films start having these weird titles that have nothing to do with the movie. Lucio Fulci, before Lucio Fulci got into Zombie and the Gates of Hell trilogy, he made a really good Giallo movie called Don't Torture a Duckling. and there's the titles of Italian movies in the 70s are fucking insane. One of my favorite ones is I'm going to get it wrong, but it's like your body is your body is a locked door and only I have the key, or your vice is a locked door and only I have the key.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So I think he got annoyed that a lot of other Italian filmmakers were starting to put animals in the title. So he was like, fuck it, I'll change the title.
Oh, okay. Well, that's some real interesting trivia there. I got to say that watching this movie, I was really getting into the Giallo genre. Like I had mentioned this like last episode that like I knew what it was. I know that they had like Italian comics that were like Giallo comics. And I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I liked Tenebrae, but now watching this, I'm like, oh, I could see myself watching a whole bunch of movies in this genre. And now watching Tenebrae, I recognized Daria Nicolodi in this. I was like, oh, she's in Tenebrae too. And then when I did the research, I saw that like she made 5 movies with Argento. And
I think she made more. I think she came back to work with him later on, but they were together for years. Like they were together and Asia Argento's their daughter. Yeah.
Okay. And then she co-wrote Suspiria too, right?
So I just watched, and I have a review up on the channel of the Dario Argento documentary Panico.
Yeah.
And they mention in that so Suspiria was his follow-up to Deep Red. And apparently all the supernatural ideas and all the witchcraft stuff came from her.
Cool.
And her family was deeply involved in witchcraft and like Wiccan and stuff like that. And there was like a dispute over like the writing credit in that. And that kind of was like where things started to kind of go a little bit south for them.
Yeah.
And like that Daria Nicolodi like didn't really like the fact that she wasn't given like like she had to like fight for a writer's credit on a movie that she effectively co-wrote and had the idea for. But the 3 mothers, which is Suspiria, Inferno, and then Mother of Tears in 2007, that is all basically coming from like her side of the coin.
Oh,
Whereas you can see a stark difference between those movies and this stuff, like the Deep Red, the Tenebrae, where there are some weird elements to it. Like this movie features psychics. Phenomena features a girl that can communicate with bugs. But they're, for the most part, like serial killer kind of slasher giallo movies. But I also love that they're mysteries, and like I love, and like this and Tenebrae have so much in common in the sense that it's like a regular guy, a non-police officer, a
Right.
non-investigator.
Right.
Something happens that he witnesses or is tangentially attached to,
Right.
and like he takes it upon himself to go and like try to solve the crime.
Yeah.
And I think that's such like a unique story that like we don't get that a lot in America.
No.
Of like, because in America, especially in the 80s, it was always the cops are the action heroes.
Right.
You're John McClane, Cobra, John Matrix from Commando.
Yes.
You're like the cops, Beverly Hills Cop, Alex Foley. The cops were the superheroes that were always stopping the bad guys. In Giallo, there's a killer on the loose. The cops are kind of like morons for the most part.
Agreed.
Who just kind of go up here and there.
Right.
And it's up to like the main character who's just kind of there by accident to go, I will solve this.
Right.
And they like form a little side team to like go investigate the mystery. And I think Deep Red has a great mystery. I think I like the mystery much better than the one in Tenebrae.
Totally agree.
I love how like there's an ending that if you think about it for a second, you're like, that doesn't really make sense because of what I've been shown in the movie.
Right.
But then the main character goes, wait a minute, that didn't make sense.
Yes.
And then you get the real ending, which Argento had the fucking balls to spoil 10 minutes into the movie.
Right. Right.
Which you didn't pick up on that, right?
I did not. I mean, I know they reference it. They talk about it at the end of the movie, but I just couldn't remember seeing that. Like, I didn't like in the beginning of the movie. I wasn't like, wait, what's that? And then like make that connection.
Yeah, same thing happened for me. I absolutely did not see that. And then it's almost like you start to when you watch the movie through and you see that at the end, then you go to yourself, oh, they must have just added that in. There's no way that actually was on screen.
Right.
10 minutes in, and then you go back and watch it and you're like, holy shit,
there it is.
It's there.
Right.
And you'll never, if you ever rewatch this movie, you will never not see it again.
Yeah. And you know what? I absolutely would rewatch this movie. I like this one a lot. I feel like it kind of has everything you want in a horror movie. Like it has these amazing kills in it. It has a good mystery. It kind of has all these tropes that you see in a lot of other famous horror movies. Like I thought of Psycho a lot, and I'll talk about that a lot later. You know, like one of the things that was really good was that when I did the research, I saw that the writer, because it's not just Argento, it's this other guy too. Do you remember the writer's name by any chance?
Bernardino Zappini.
There you go. Yeah. They wanted to. The idea for this movie came from painful injuries that the audience could relate to. They were saying that, like, okay, a lot of slashers have people getting like, stabbed or like, shot or something like that, but not everyone has experienced that. And then when you think about the murders in this movie, there's like this. I mean, there are people that get stabbed, right? But then there's like someone getting their face smashed into a counter in a bathroom. There's someone who essentially dies because they fall in a broken window. That's much more relatable than
the guy who gets his teeth like shoved into every corner of the room. Like, ugh.
Yeah. That reminds me too. We didn't mention in our True Detective review the fucking tooth on the door frame. We didn't mention that, but that's okay. this movie, I just really liked it. I think I actually like the music in this better too. And this, so it was the first time that he was working with Daria Nicolodi in this, and then it's also his first time working with Goblin. And I just love this freaking music.
There's a part towards like the latter parts of the film where it's just like this recycling beat over and over again.
Yep.
And it reminds me so much of, I think it's Kill Bill, where it's like dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just and then I Googled it, and Tarantino has admitted that he loved Tenebrae, actually, and that the scene in Tenebrae where the woman gets her hand cut off and like sprays the wall with blood, that's like a scene that has deeply influenced Tarantino.
Yeah.
So there is like an Argento connection for Tarantino. I'd be interested if like I want to look up the soundtrack now for Kill Bill, or and kind of see if he like dabbled in Goblin, or because it just felt that music, every Goblin score in an Argento movie. And again, this goes back to like when you asked me, like, do I like this or Tenebrae more? It's like every Goblin score is my favorite Goblin score. So like when I'm in the movie theater watching Tenebrae, I'm like, fucking hell, this is the best. This is easily the best score that they've ever done.
Right.
And then I'm rewatching this and I'm like, no, Deep Red, definitely. And then I'll rewatch Suspiria, and it'll be again like, no, this is definitely the best Goblin score.
Yes.
At least Inferno is easier. That's Brian Eno. Not Brian Eno. That's oh god. It's not Goblin. I know it's a Keith Emerson. That's who it is. Oh. It's Keith Emerson who does the score for that movie. And then in Phenomena, it's like a collection of like metal, like they have Iron Maiden on the soundtrack. And
oh shit,
yeah,
I gotta check that one out too. That's got fucking Jennifer Connelly,
young
right?
Jennifer Connelly, Donald Pleasance, Daria Nicolodi, and a crazy chimpanzee.
Nice. Okay, maybe I gotta check that one out. But the thing is, Danny, is that I can hear that music in my head right now. I've heard that music in my head the whole day. It just keeps repeating on a loop. Now, one other thing, what you were just saying reminded me of something I wanted to point out, that these movies, when you watch Tenebrae and you watch this, there's so many killings, right? But in both movies, all the killings make sense. It's not like a typical slasher where it's just like, oh, well, these people are at the wrong place in the wrong time, or, you know, they just did something wrong and now the killer's going to go after them. It makes sense. And in this movie in particular, all the killings make sense as to what goes on. Now, this movie, right off the bat, gets into a murder right away. It's funny, like, I was watching this movie on my computer, and my 7-year-old daughter comes by, and it just has like a scene inside of a house, and it looks like almost like a Christmas movie at first with the table, but then like almost immediately there's someone screaming and someone being stabbed to death. So I was like, oh, I'm going to pause that. This movie, this has some of the best kills I've seen in this type of film.
Yeah, the kills kind of help the title. There's definitely a deep red, and I love the music. Again, just to tie the music to the kill, that like Christmassy like hymn that's playing, like
Yep.
As and like every time that music plays, it's like a kill is gonna happen.
Right.
And then that
go ahead.
But then there's like some genuinely scary, unsettling moments in this.
Oh yeah,
like the scene with the puppet walking in is just bafflingly strange, and really scary, like just out of nowhere. But like when he's uncovering, when he's in that house and he's like breaking through the wall, and it's like the flashlight going. And it's like kind of like, Haunting of Hill House, like looking in the walls of like hidden spaces, or even the Cask of Amontillado scene from
Fall of the House of Usher.
Fall of the House of Usher, where it's like we're burying a body inside now.
Yeah.
And you scan by, and I don't know if you noticed, but next to the skeleton is the Christmas tree.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I think I saw that.
That's like really unsettling, creepy moments.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I was just like digging it like so much. And one thing that we talked about in our True Detective review, which you guys should go check out too on our channel, is the idea of, is something real? Is there something supernatural to it? And this movie is just pretty much a straight up slasher where there's a murder mystery and it's just there's a killer with leather gloves killing people, but there's all these sort of allusions to supernatural things. Like there's this little girl who's the daughter of the caretaker of this haunted house at one point, where they call it a haunted house. And like it's kind of almost implied that she's a witch. Then there's a woman who's a medium, who's like a psychic in the beginning of the movie, and she essentially does predict like everything that happens. Like the kind of the thing that sets this whole movie off is her murder. And she says right off of the bat that she could identify who the killer is, and that's why she's taken out. So there's like a light little sprinkling of supernatural on this movie, and I just really liked that a lot.
Yeah. It's to watch, like, it's funny how Argento goes from like pure, like no supernatural, just murder mystery giallos, to this where he touches the line of supernatural. And then his next two films right after this are Suspiria and Inferno, which are like witchcraft, Satan, like legitimate supernatural movies.
Right.
And then he like pulls it back and goes to Tenebrae, which is again just a slasher giallo story, where the murders make sense given what we find out later.
Right.
And he follows that up with Phenomena, which is again kind of in the spirit of Deep Red, where like it has like a toe in the water of supernatural, but everything kind of lives in the real world. I definitely want to rewatch Opera now, because that's like the last movie of like his great stretch.
Yeah.
And I feel like Opera's much more aligned with like this and Tenebrae than it is with Suspiria.
Well, that's going to be our third movie for Argento month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Argento Love Month. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. The you were mentioning this song before, like that kind of kid song. The reason why they go to this house that they claim is a haunted house is because the psychic, she knows this one doctor, the doctor who's with her right before she goes and gets murdered. And he mentions this folklore book about this haunted house, or this haunted house is in this folklore book. And then they said that when you go by this house, you can hear kids singing. And like there's this caretaker that's watching over the house, and he has his daughter. I already kind of mentioned her, but there's this really creepy thing that happens with the daughter where he's like, stop that, don't do that. The dad says to her, don't, I hate when you do that. And then you look down and you see that she's essentially like impaled a lizard, right? It's just squirming on the ground. So unsettling. And it's funny because that's not even the only time in this movie where like an animal gets impaled and is squirming, right?
Oh, the bird, yeah.
The bird, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there was also a scene in the version I watched where there's like two dogs biting each other in a scene that I read was like cut from most cuts of the movie. So like I told you, I watched like a 20-minute longer edition that was like half in English, half in Italian.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a weird dog biting scene. So and Tenebrae has a crazy dog scene also.
That's something else, man. That scene, Jesus. And by the way, if you guys want to go check out our Tenebrae review, that's up on our channel too. We're doing 3 Dario Argento movies. But I was going to say that The other thing that really stood out was the murder scene that was in the bathroom. So essentially, the woman that wrote the folklore book that this house is mentioned in, the killer goes to her house and kills her because the main character was going to go talk to her, and she's killed in this bathroom. Like essentially, she's stabbed, and then her head is put into hot scalding water, and it's just so gross when she's pulled out of it, right?
This movie came out 6 years before Halloween 2.
Oh,
and
yes.
Halloween 2 has a very famous scene where a nurse is scalded to death in boiling water. And I'm curious, and even My Bloody Valentine from 1981 features a scene where the killer like boils somebody's head in a pot of boiling water. So that kill, I don't know if it's like directly inspired by this one, but that is something that would become very prevalent in horror just a few years later when the 70s became the 80s.
Yeah, and I think the makeup effects are really done well because like her face looks really red when she first goes in, then she's taken out of the water, then she goes back in, and then her face is like red and burnt looking. Then when she's on the ground, it almost looks like candle wax like on her face, and it's just real disturbing. I'm just picturing that right now. Another thing that I love about that scene is that she goes to write like the killer's name on the mirror, and they really like focus in on showing how steamy the bathroom is, and then a window gets opened and then all the steam goes out, and I just really liked how like it just disappears. And then that doctor, he figures out, well, I'm going to turn the steam on, and he does, and then you see her message. I love all that shit, man.
Yeah, no, the mystery element to it, like I like that. I really would love to see more modern American horror movies try to take like this approach. Because like you said, like, you know, your stereotypical slasher is like I think of like a Friday the 13th movie where it's like there's a kill and then they cut to another random character or two characters who are, and it's just like, okay, well, we cut from this one scene where somebody died, and now we're going to go to this scene where these two characters have nothing to do on screen,
right,
except be killed.
Right, exactly.
And when there have been enough kills and we make it back to our final girl,
right,
that is going to be when we bring the movie to an end.
Right.
But the Italian Giallo style is very different, where it's like, yes, there are these violent murders. Yes, there is like it's not like there is a mystery to it. It's not like, oh, well, we know it's Jason and we just want to watch Jason kill people.
Right.
It's we don't know who the killer is, but they're still managing to commit these awful crimes. And, you know, why are they choosing these people? Well, there's a specific reason. And it's like that doctor, he doesn't feel like a character who's there to just be picked off and added to the kill count, to, you know, use another YouTube channel name.
Right.
He feels like an important character who's in like the very opening scene of the movie.
Right.
And he like interacts with our lead characters. He interacts with everybody else. He's like he actually goes and investigates part of the like mystery, and then like for him to die the way he dies, we're like, whoa, okay. Like, and I felt like, again, it's not to go back to our Tenebrae review, but we brought that up also, where it's like all these beautiful women being killed. Once everything is revealed, it makes sense as to why this happened and like why the killer was killing those people. And
right,
yeah, it and it's good. It's like if I hate to use the term because of like what it means in modern horror, but it's like an elevated style of slasher movie where it's like, yes, if all you want is the graphic violence and the kills, the deep red, so to speak,
right,
you're going to get that, but you're also going to get a mystery. You're also going to get compelling characters. some characters who you actually might like who don't make it to the end, instead of just an assembly line of fodder.
Right, exactly. Really good points. You almost joined the assembly line of fodder right there, man. But
Yeah.
what I was going to say was that, like, when you look at like modern American horror movies, like I don't even know what is even in the same league or the same type of movie. Like maybe like a Murder in Venice, but obviously that's not this type of horror, this level of like, crazy kills. I don't even think it's rated R, but at least it's like, go ahead.
What's really interesting is that I thought of that too, because I was trying to think of like modern films that have this style,
right,
or even anything similar.
right.
And I thought of those like, okay, these are mysteries that have murders in them. But then I thought that the biggest difference is you have Hercule Poirot, the world's most famous detective.
Right.
Whereas again, these movies, it's just like random guy,
right.
horror author in Tenebrae who
Right.
decides he's going to solve the crime of the murders of the people around him.
Right.
You have this guy, Marcus, played by David Hemmings, who is a random piano player who just accidentally is the main character of this movie.
Right.
He happens to just look, he's hanging out with his drunk friend by the freaking Trevi Fountain, or this, I think that fountain's in Turin, I read. And he just happens to turn as a murder is taking place, and he runs up the stairs to that building to try to help this woman being murdered.
Right.
And he becomes the main character of a movie, because instead of just going like, let me call the cops and then go home, he's like, no, I want to investigate this. I want to do the research. I think that there are so many talented directors in horror right now.
Right. Agreed.
That have their own unique styles that I would love to see make a modern day Giallo film.
Yeah.
And I don't know who that filmmaker is, Mike Flanagan. I don't know who that filmmaker is.
Right.
But Mike Flanagan's about to make this the Dark Tower, so he can have a stretch of a couple of years off from.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I think that Last Night in Soho, Edgar Wright, I think he said that was sort of inspired by Giallo.
So I can see that, like even the makeup that was used in that.
Yeah.
The fact that they hint a lot at supernatural in that movie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, they kind of do, because the girl's going
with the ghosts and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but like it ends up being a very human reveal.
Right.
So like I can see that as like a modern day attempt where it toes the line between supernatural and real world killer.
Right.
There was a mystery aspect to it,
I mean, see, like when I think about these movies, right? Because I think about like when we were younger with like Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and then there's all the copies of Scream where it is a murder mystery, but it's kind of like what you were saying before, where the characters are still fodder in those movies, where it's more like, well, these are annoying characters we're going to introduce just so we can kill them off. Whereas in this, there aren't really those annoying and obnoxious characters. I mean, just to kind of like bring it full circle, the most obnoxious person in the movie, at one point you think they are the killer. It's the guy's friend. It's his friend Carlo. Right. And then he's not the killer, but he is in that first murder in the beginning of the movie. And then boy, is his end pretty freaking fantastic. Right? That was maybe my favorite part of the movie, except for the actual killer's death. But like, essentially he's trying to get away from the cops. A garbage truck comes by, and I don't know what's up with these garbage trucks in Turin, Italy, but they have like essentially like a hook on them that just scoops him up and drags him around. And it just looks brutal the way he's being dragged around. And then the car stops and you hear another car's brakes screeching and you're like, oh, I know it's coming. And then just splat. It's fucking great.
Yeah. One thing we didn't mention that I absolutely love about Deep Red is the relationship between David Hemming's character Marcus and Daria Nicolodi's Gianna.
Oh yes, okay, yeah, good point.
They are weird. Like there's like a not even a hint. There's like blatant sexism at one point at like the beginning of their like partnership.
Right.
But like she asserts her dominance in like one of my favorite parts of this whole movie, and it makes me laugh every single time I watch it, is when he first gets into her car and like ends up like almost on the floor in this little like Volkswagen Beetle.
Right.
And she like arm wrestles him and beats him, and he like throws a fit. But then it's like they kind of weirdly end up together until I like the one part where like she's like, I'll go upstairs with you, but only because I'm single and I want to.
Right. No, it's really great. And it's funny because she kind of randomly gets roped into all this because she's a reporter. She takes his picture. She goes and helps him with the investigation. She's the one that takes him out of the building, the haunted house, when it goes on fire. When she gets stabbed, I felt really bad. But then I was thinking to myself, I was like, wait, this isn't as like brutal as all the other deaths. So something's up. And then it's because that the friend is the one that stabbed her, right? Not the actual killer.
I think so. I think that at that point he was trying to like cover up for
right
his mother, who it turns out is, and Carlo is the kid from the beginning.
Yeah.
Who like witnesses his mother murder his father, and that's his father's corpse in the house.
Right.
Oh yeah, so I see you have like the movie's the inverse of Psychos, which now makes a lot of sense.
Right. I mean, at least that's what I was getting. I was wondering if like Hitchcock played an influence on them because, like, you know, instead of the mother's corpse, you have the father's corpse. It's all like fossilized like that. And then you have the son covering up for the mother's murders. In Psycho, it's just the son is carrying out the mother's murders. But
also the mom actually did commit murders in Psycho. Like,
right.
Like she killed the father, and then.
So I mean, it is. So maybe it's not the inverse of Psycho, but it's kind of like a variation of Psycho.
Yeah, no, definitely. Anytime you have like a hidden corpse and kids killing in the name of their mother, or defending their killer mother, it always ties back to Psycho.
Yeah, and I gotta say thank you to you, because now I finally got that Deep Red music out of my head, and now I'm hearing "Killing in the Name of."
There you go.
There you go. But okay, so the mom is revealed. Now you point out to me that, like, you know, the killer's shown right in the first 10 minutes, and there's that mom's face in that mirror, and the main guy, he's thinking that there's a picture that's been taken off the wall, because he's like, I remember seeing this picture, and then at the very end he realizes that it was her reflection. And besides that, he has that moment that you mentioned before where he's like, wait a minute, Carlo was with me when I saw the woman get murdered, so he couldn't be the killer. Then the mom comes in and, you know, she confronts him. She gets a good whack with the meat cleaver, but then there's this crazy fucking death that's at the very end, which I just absolutely love, where her necklace gets caught on that elevator. And, I mean, what'd you think of that, man?
I mean, the first time I saw it, it was like kind of jaw dropping. That's like an all-time great decapitation moment. And it's even worse when you think about it. It's like a decapitation is one of those deaths in a horror movie that's typically done very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Like I think of The Omen, where like the glass flies through and takes the photographer's head off, or you know, any of the other like big three serial killers, monsters. Like anytime they do a decapitation, it's very quick. This is like you have time to register, oh fuck, this is going to rip my head off, and probably feel it slowly going through your head, your neck. It's really gross.
It is, and like some like white stuff kind of comes out of her mouth. I think it's like saliva. It's so nasty. And then we get the last shot of the movie, which is just so perfect for a movie called Deep Red, where the main character is just like looking down. It's a reflection of him looking down into a pool of blood, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm really fucking glad that you really like Tenebrae and that you seem to really, really like this even more.
Exactly.
Because there's always that feeling when you're like as big a horror fan as me or as Chris, and like you're a big horror fan, but you have your blind spots, and it's like
you don't say.
So it's like I'm always nervous. I'm like, hey, we should do Argento month, and you're like, oh, I've never seen an Argento movie, and it's like, shit, he might really fucking hate this, and he might not like Italian horror at all, and then we have to stop the channel, and I can't talk to him anymore. No, I'm kidding. But like, so I'm just really glad that like you're enjoying these movies and that you want to keep going, and we'll watch one more. But like, my recommendation seriously is like between Shudder, Screenbox, Tubi, a lot of these 70s Giallo movies are streaming for free or on platforms that we already pay for.
Right.
And usually they are 90 to 100 minutes.
Ooh.
Normally, even the bad ones are good. And what I mean by that is kind of like an 80s slasher movie.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, that was not great, but I saw some good kills. I saw some naked people. and I don't hate myself for spending the last 100 minutes watching that.
Right, exactly.
And a lot of these Giallo movies, a lot of these 70s Italian horror films, when you get into some of you have Argento, but then you have like Lucio Fulci, and then underneath them, then you have like guys like Sergio Martino. And the further you get from like Bava and Argento, the more you get into like movies that feel almost like NC-17 movies in terms of like the blood and the sex and everything. And you're like, whoa. Yeah.
Hey, you never know, man. I'm honestly, the way that Argento was portrayed in other movies, and they talk about him, I think they talk about him a lot in Juno, for instance, and just in other things in general, they make it seem like he's like really gross. And I'm sure there is really gross stuff in his other movies, but I was totally cool with the kills in these two. I actually kind of like them, which sounds weird. But
did you say that Sherry wanted to watch Suspiria with you?
Yeah, she was more interested in the remake of Suspiria, but I think she was down with the watching the original too. So
the remake is shockingly good. It's also 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
The original is great, and it's 90 minutes.
Yes. But guess what? The remake has Madame Web herself in it.
And she's really good in it, too. It also has Mia Goth.
Oh, nice. I love Mia Goth. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I'm actually going to go probably watch Suspiria, even though that's not our next one. Our next one is Opera, and we're going to cover that as part of our Argento month. I'm really glad, though, that you wanted to watch this one because I did enjoy this one a lot. So, you know, what can people check out on our channel right now?
So we did a live review of the finale of True Detective Night Country, where our old buddy, the original Lassercast co-member himself, Chris, showed up.
Yes.
So you get 3 for the price of 1 in hot white bearded men.
Yeah.
We also have a bunch of shorts up on the channel now. I did a short for Panico, the Argento documentary. We did a full review of Tenebrae. I have a short for Here for Blood, which is a fun splatter movie on Screenbox. Lisa Frankenstein, which is in theaters now. I think that's True Detective, and that's it.
Yeah, nice. And I mentioned in our last video that Danny and I have a screener that we're going to check out too. I already watched like the first, 20 minutes to a half hour of it. I was really digging it. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about that as well. Nice. Guys, make sure that you give us a like. We can always use that. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that as well. And from the last